Welcome to the Human Evolution Podcast, where we dive deep into the science, philosophies, and strategies that create real and lasting change. I'm Ori Goldstein, and here we leave traditional self-help behind and map the real terrain of true personal development.
I was wondering about that because I obviously was down in Mexico for 6 months, and there's that whole like cliche thing that used to be you couldn't go to Mexico and if somebody asked you if you wanted a drink or something, no matter what it was, iced tea, you'd say like, well, I don't want the ice cubes. I don't know that that's necessarily true anymore. In some of the new resorts, if you'll notice, well, maybe you didn't because I was there for a long time and I can look around because I was up in a higher building, but some of the new resorts and restaurants will have this massive water tank on the roof, and this truck will come by every day or so that says potable water on it. Whether it is or not, I don't know. But then they'll pump it up to the roof, and then that's how they get their water. Now, but that doesn't mean that, and it just like it happened in the U.S. doesn't mean people aren't washing their hands properly. You never know. So you think you got it from a restaurant. You don't have to name the place, but it was on Fifth or...
That's the part that annoys me the most. I mean, like, had we been at like some kind of like a back alley thing, I'd say I deserved it. We went down Fifth Avenue, which is like, I mean, for the people that are watching, is just like the main frickin' drag of Playa del Carmen. We find this really nice restaurant. We go in, have really amazing food. Everything is great. And within 10 minutes of leaving the meal, all of a sudden, both of our stomachs are going gurgle, gurgle. We're like, let's head back to the apartment. There was no doubt in my mind this happened at that restaurant, and it was intense. And like for like the next 3 days, and the event started the next day. So for like the next 3 days, it was just like it's be within 10 feet of a toilet at all times if possible.
Yeah, that's the worst.
That was definitely an interesting time.
Well, I kind of want to know the name of the place, but we don't have to air them out here. But there's so many restaurants; it's so commercialized now, and I've got nothing but good things to say about Playa del Carmen. I've been down a couple of times for long stays, but it does have that little zone where, well, quite honestly, when I went the first time from Fort Lauderdale to Playa del Carmen, I'm like, oh, it's just like Fort Lauderdale, because it really is like
right?
the beach, and then like Las Olas,
Lincoln Road and South Beach, like it's all the same kind of thing. It's like Playa del Carmen does even better. I mean, I think like Fifth Avenue stretches like a good couple of miles.
It does, and there's no cars allowed on it, so it's walkable and everything else. But yeah, now that I usually go down for months at a time, and then I'll get sick about a month in, because I'm always like, oh, I made it this time. It's not going to happen, and then it fucking happens. But that's a long one though. So like a week or two ago. It's a couple of weeks.
That was
right?
like 2 weeks ago now, and like I'd happily say I'm back to about 90%, and I'm doing all the right things. The activated charcoal, all that stuff that we discussed about cleansing and everything else. Yeah. But still, I mean, like I would be very happy to take a nap right now. My body is just still trying to get its energy back.
We'll make this one as short if there is such a thing. Well, so you went down to Mexico for one of Joe Dispenza's, I don't remember what they call it, the progressive...
The advanced week-long retreat.
Because he's got several different stages, and I now have his online stuff. I know we talk about him a lot on here, but I think it's very relevant. So I watched some of his stuff last night, and I'm like, I remember how great this stuff is. So you're at the stage now where you're going to like the highest level retreats that he's got.
Well, mean, he's only got 3 levels really when it's all said and done. So the one you buy online is a progressive and intensive, which is, I mean, it's a lot of videos. I think it's about 20 hours worth of videos that teaches the basic theory. And then right after that, you go on to the advanced week-long retreat, which is 1 week with him where some mornings you start at 6 a.m., one morning you start at 4 a.m., and it is just insane. And you finish at about between 5 and 7 o'clock every day. And it's just, he is hitting you with the same information. The moment he hits you with information, he says, okay, fine, now we're going to do a meditation on it. And I love that guy so much. It's insane. So that is the advanced week-long retreat, 6 days really. And then he's got the advanced follow-up, which is basically the exact same information as advanced retreat, but just in terms of meditations. He doesn't take you over the theory anymore. It's just like we went to one in Denver last year, and his very first words out of his mouth, the moment he came up on stage, was, sit back, close your eyes. It's like, it goes straight into meditation, and it is intense over 4 days. And it's just great because you can see that he's really evolving the work. The thing I really love about him the most is he brings in his now affiliated with University of UC San Diego with researchers there. And they're getting all this amazing data. I mean, they're researching, most of his retreats have between 2,000 and 3,000 people. And most of his retreats has got some kind of a study going on where he's testing something. Usually it's going to be some kind of a blood test, some kind of a urine test, microbiome tests, all these different things. And he's getting back interesting results, and they're starting to publish them. And the thing I loved about this retreat was based upon information that they got from the research, he updated a lot of the things he was teaching us to actually match the research to get us better results. So this guy is very data driven. I mean, it's like he's a nerd in the best form of the word. And I love the fact that he gets information, he uses it, and he is just so giving with information he shares. I loved it.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that he's getting some recognition now, because I remember back when this was only a few years ago now, somebody introduced me to Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, the book, and I listened to it on audio in my car. I was on surveillance back then, and I was like, man, I'm not sure if I'm there yet with the metaphysical, or and it's not even really metaphysical. I'm not sure that I'm there yet.
Oh, I would say it is even.
It's very interesting. I'm like, wow, this is extremely interesting. And I had a couple of moments where I was like, I think there's something there. It still wasn't mainstream in the sense that I know he's had researchers and everything else, but like you mentioned, since he partnered with the university now, they're taking him seriously, which I think is great, because I've got my liver issues. I've got no major health issues at all, but there are certain things where I'm like, maybe if I started, looking inward a little bit and using my mind a little bit more, aside from just diet and exercise, maybe there are some things I could improve my own physical well-being. And of course, we all know people that have some pretty serious ailments. So the fact that there's at least some studies going on and they're doing this is really great. It's really great to hear. It's exciting to hear. Yeah. So I'm all in on him too, man. I can't wait to go to one of those things. And you were down there for what? It was a week or something, or 4 days, 5 days?
We were there for about 10 days in total. I mean, the retreat itself was a week, and then we were there 2 days before, which is when we had that wonderful experience walking down Playa del Carmen, and then just a day after at the resort just to catch the flight, so we didn't have to rush the ending day of the retreat. And a shameless plug for him, I know that right now is June 19th. So actually this weekend, to talk about his research, this weekend he's got a new movie coming out where it's actually this weekend's going to be free screening. Add it in the show notes. I'll give you the name of it. I believe that the name is a shift, but I could be wrong about it. But basically this weekend people are going to be able to watch it for free, and it goes over his research. And the thing I love is you talk about a guy, you're going to a meditation retreat, not a big deal, but there hasn't been a single retreat I've gone to yet where at some point in time you just sit down for lunch and you end up just sitting down with random strangers and talking to them. So for example, this retreat, I sat down with these two really beautiful, amazing random strangers, one of which was a woman that had stage 4 cancer, did Joe Dispenza work, and is now cancer-free. It's so amazing that you meet these people. It's one thing to just kind of hear about a person up on stage or watch a video. It's another thing that you just randomly have lunch with a person and they're like, yeah, I cured my cancer. And they talk about it like it's so commonplace. And the thing I love about him is that it's to take it back to what you were talking about, the fact that it's becoming so mainstream and that people are starting to understand it. I remember for a period of time, when I was working on people, I've got there is a specific technique that gets people over their phobias, and it works really well. And you can get a person over their phobia in about 10 to 15 minutes, whatever it is. And a person would come to my office and I would do the technique on them. And I would say, okay, fine. Now think of a spider. And they'd be like, well, it doesn't scare me. And I'm like, okay, great. So you're done. And they go, no, but you haven't done the hypnosis yet. And I'm like, but you're not scared of a spider anymore. And they'd go, well, you haven't done the hypnosis yet. And they would actually a week later call me up and go, Ori, I'm still afraid of spiders. And what would happen is that they would reintegrate the phobia back into their lives. And because that they didn't believe that the shift happened or that could have been that easy, they actually their brain starts looking for it and it starts finding clues and it starts recreating it for them. So the thing I love about what he does is he goes over the theory in such specific detail. I mean, when you watch the videos, I won't lie, I was one of the people that almost fell asleep watching those videos, but he goes over it in such specific detail. And on the retreat, it's a lot more fun. But by the time you do the techniques with him, there is no, oh gosh, what's going to happen, or how's it going to happen, or how's this technique going to work? He fills out the whole entire model for you so fully that you know for a fact how it's going to work and how it's specifically going to work for you. And that's the difference that makes a difference with the work he does, I believe, that you get those crazy results because people understand exactly why it's going to work for them and how it's going to work for them and the shift that's going to happen for them. And the research just backs it even more.
And that's been my issue with most things in life is I'm a learner, or not a slow learner, but I need to watch something 3 or 4 times, and it's strange. Like on the third or fourth time, it really does click. I'm like, oh shit. So I have to tell myself that now. Let's say I had to go learn something new this afternoon, and I watched the video on it, and I was totally lost. I get very frustrated. I'm like, I didn't understand that at all. And then I'll watch it a second time or a third time, and like I get it now. And that's what I appreciate about him reinforcing it so much, because I think that some of the apprehension there is I just don't understand it. It's kind of like any type of meditation. We could just talk about that. Like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Like that'll get wrapped up in your head too. So it's really nice that he does repeat himself, so to speak, and he does kind of reinforce things because that's what I want. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, and I'm going to try to either heal myself, either emotionally or physically or whatever, I want to make sure like I'm not missing a thing. So I love the fact that he repeats, and actually, and just like you going to these retreats, if I found out that he's going to do a retreat every so many months or every like once a year, and it was going to be almost exactly the same, I would still go. I mean, I want to reinforce that.
That's exactly the way I feel.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm sure you've had a lot of clients, like just what you just touched on is that they'll make some great progress, and then after leaving or whatever, they'll talk themselves right back into the situation they were in before.
It's such a typical thing. It's such a common thing, and it's back to that thing. And I've said it to you, I don't know how many times. And again, it's just one of those things that it goes by in passing, but people don't really pay much attention to it. And it's what I call you're trying too hard. And the concept of that is plain and simply that you're so stuck in your old mindset, like you already believe there's a concept. I'm sure you've heard of it, Roger Bannister and the 4-minute mile. So you know the story of that, right? So up until whatever it was, 1968 or whenever it was that Roger Bannister broke it, like everyone was stuck in the mindset of it's impossible for human beings to run a mile in under 4 minutes. They were so sure of it that medical science actually even came up with a theory that if a person ran a mile in under 4 minutes, the body wouldn't be able to handle it, so the heart would explode inside the chest and the person would die. The Russians were so sure that they weren't going to be able to do it any other way that they took their best runners and they tied them to horses and made the horses run to drag the people to make the people run faster because people couldn't do it. Roger Bannister, on the other hand, says, you know what? Like he was a medical student. He was studying it. And he's like, I don't see any reason why this couldn't happen. Like there's nothing that really substantiates it. So he had the one thought of it being different. Whereas every other runner was already stuck in the mindset of it couldn't happen. He was in the mindset of maybe it could. And he trained. And at one point in time, he finally broke it by like milliseconds, whatever it was. But the most interesting thing that happened next was like within like 4 or 6 weeks of him breaking that record, another runner did it. Mm-hmm. So in the whole of human history, no one can do it. Within 4 weeks of him doing it, another runner manages to do it. And now you've actually got some people on high school teams that are running a mile in under 4 minutes. Yeah. And to me, that really boils down to the fact that you're never going to be able to do something until in the back of your brain, you believe it possible in the first place. And so it's like it completely changes everything. And from the other side, you're not going to believe that you have changed until you absolutely believe that change is possible for you and that you are capable of doing it. It's like I said, I can get a person over a phobia. They can tell me that they're no longer scared of spiders, but in the back of their head, if I don't get rid of that belief sitting there saying, oh, but it wasn't the way I was expecting it to happen, they'll retrain themselves to become afraid of spiders. It's the most amazing, crazy thing that you can actually see happen over and over again, that a person, there's that saying, it's Wayne Dyer, I got it from Wayne Dyer, it was probably before him, that most people say, you know what, I'll believe it when I see it. But the real truth is, I'll see it when I believe it. As soon as you believe something, you start seeing the result of it.
The whole limiting belief thing it's always on our minds these days, and we can talk about it forever. And to bring it back to like the physical realm real quick, there's another study along the lines of with the weightlifters. They gave them the saline solution, told them it was steroids.
Told them it was steroids.
And they all put on like, they just went and did their normal routine, and they were told over a certain period of time that they were being injected with human growth hormone, whatever, or whatever the test, whatever the strong stuff used to be that everybody was on.
Anabolic steroids.
And they put on muscle and they put on strength, and they had the same gains that they would have had, had they not. And it was just, again, it's just all completely mental, because in their mind they believe that they were getting steroids. So I mean, how crazy is that?
So I'm going a little bit back to Joe Dispenza stuff, and this goes back to the studies that he did. But like he actually had meditators like ahead of time just think about a specific molecule. Like he told them what the molecule did, and he actually showed them like a picture of the molecule, and he had them meditate on it. And they tested their blood before the meditation, after the meditation. And what they discovered was that they actually had more of that specific amino acid existing in their body after the meditation, whereas most often it would only be able to be created through through outside the body, through a person taking a pill or something. And so what that basically boils down to is that the human brain is the best pharmacist on the face of the planet if you really just train it correctly. And so, for example, when you take a bodybuilder and you tell them you're getting the anabolic steroids, what's going to happen is if the person believes it enough, they're actually going to start creating the same chemicals to build muscle, etc., just because they believe it enough. And this is back to, I mean, Joe Dispenza again wrote the book, and I'm not talking about him as in like he is the best on the face of the planet, but I really do think he's a very, very wise person. But he wrote the book, You're the Placebo. Mm-hmm. And there's so much truth in that. And what they've discovered is that it's not really enough to have a placebo, but you want a placebo that a person truly believes. So, for example, they took people that needed a knee operation, and that in order to like completely fix like a damaged meniscus, like, I mean, something that was really essential to have an operation for. And what they did was they took these people and they gave them anesthesia. They actually made a cut in the knee, but they didn't actually do the actual operation to fix anything. But when the person was done, they actually had the scar on their knee. They had some pain. They were given painkillers and everything else. And what they discovered was, and I'm probably going to butcher the results, it's, let's just say 80% of the people that had the fake operation had the same or better results than the people that actually had the real operation.
That's incredible.
And so what does that mean, right? Like, I mean, like if you really take that to the deepest level, it means that the body is completely capable of fixing itself. It's just that you need to basically train it in the right way to be able to do it by getting rid of the belief that it can't fix itself.
Yeah. And that's the trick, right? Is really convincing yourself. I'm just getting into like Joe's stuff now, and I fully intend to use it on, I've got a list of things here that need to be fixed internally. Again, and nothing even that major.
We'll get to that moment in a moment.
Yeah, well,
yes.
I mean, physically anyway. But I actually tried this the other day on a walk. This probably isn't the same thing, but I was walking, and typically my right knee hurts, even though I'm getting some stuff done on it now. Minor, very minor, nothing permanent. And I was actually walking, and I was thinking, like, well, does it really hurt, or is this just something I've been telling myself, like, in my mind? Because this is what I do all day, right? I'm like, I want to go for a walk right now. It's finally nice out here in Michigan. It's finally up to 75 degrees for our 2 months of good weather up here. And I'm like, I need to get outside and go for a walk. So in my mind, I've got it where, like, every time I wear this certain shoe or that certain shoe, my knee's going to hurt, and it does. And then a couple days ago, I'm like, you know, what the hell? I'm just going to walk normally, and I'm not going to alter because you know how it is when you have one injured leg, usually you
limp to some degree. Yeah. You compensate.
That's right. Compensate. Yeah. And I'm like, it's going to cause problems somewhere else. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to walk like I would normally walk. And I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't done it myself. I'm just walking down the road that I usually, I'm like, you know, maybe this thing doesn't hurt. Maybe it's all in my head. I'm like, that's bullshit. And sure enough, like the last probably half a mile, I had zero pain. And I think that a lot of that's tension, you know, because they say like most of the stuff in the body, like that, we talked about John Sarno before with the mind body thing with the back pain.
That is exactly where I was going to take it. Yeah.
And I kept telling myself, I'm like, maybe this thing doesn't hurt. Maybe it doesn't hurt. And I had to, so the trick is, going back to everything you just said, is you really have to, in order for you to really believe it, because I can say right now, like, oh, my knee's fine, then get up and go do jumping jacks and like fall over. I think that's what's hard for people to grasp, because I know it's hard for me to grasp, of really, convincing yourself, like the knee surgery thing, that's perfect, because there's no way those people would have known. But even in the limited, a little bit the other day, you know, just walking, I'm like, maybe this is all in my head, and I'm just walking, and I took a deep breath. I kind of relaxed. I actually did that, one of the exercises that we did together, where the vagus nerve, like I kind of like relax and this is while I'm walking, so I wasn't sitting, but I kind of I kind of released all the tension, and I'm like, put your feet in front of one another, walk normally, and you're fine. And I couldn't believe it, because I took a few steps and it didn't hurt, and I kept taking steps and it didn't hurt. Now, when I thought about, then I tricked myself. I rolled back into it right as I'm walking. I'm like, but it should hurt. And then the pain started to creep back in. I'm like, this is really weird. And this is the middle of the day. I hadn't been drinking or anything. You know what I mean? But it was really cool to be able to do that live, man.
You are making me so happy with what you're talking about right now because, like, I mean, like, you're hitting the nail right on the head in terms of what needs to happen here. And you're going to see it. I mean, it's going to be in what, like 2 weeks' time when you go to your Vipassana retreat.
Yeah.
But like the whole idea of Vipassana, and like and we're going to take this in a bit of a roundabout way to get
Sure.
there, is you scan your body and whatever it is you feel, instead of going into your pre-programmed thought of like, oh gosh, my back is tight and that means I need to readjust or I need to compensate for it, you just sit there and you stare at it in a very scientific way. So how large is it? Is it a burning sensation? Is it a cooling sensation? Is it stabbing? Is it throbbing? And you get to know it from a scientific point of view. But the whole idea is for one moment in time, you look at it objectively rather than subjectively. You step away from it and you get to know it. And that little moment in time where you actually become the observer rather than the experiencer changes everything. And that's really like, I mean, in the same way, how you get people over phobias or anything else. So to, again, take this even in a wider arc, if we should. So like, I mean, for example, there was a woman at the Joe Dispenza event that like, we became friends with, and she was afraid of water. So on the last day, I got to work with her on her phobia. And it was just so much fun for me to do, like that we ended up in a pool and we ended up getting her to dunk her head and we had so much fun with it. But basically what it really boiled down to was when she was 8 years old, her cousin was playing with her and he threw her into the water and she didn't know how to swim. And since then, she's always been afraid of water. On the unconscious level, what was basically going on at that moment was every single time she ever thought about water, that somewhere in the back of her mind, she was remembering what it was like to swallow the water when her cousin pushed her in. She remembered all that experience. And all that I had to do with her, which was actually very, very simple, was get her into a deep state of relaxation, which is super easy after a person just did 7 days with Joe Dispenza. So I get her into a super relaxed state, and I had her think about the experience as an observer rather than experiencing it. And so she saw the girl getting pushed in. She saw the girl swallowing water. And the whole idea is while she was doing it, much like you did when you were walking, I got her to relax herself like you got yourself to relax yourself with a vagus nerve exercise. And as soon as she was able to think about the same experience and not get attached into it, what happened was every other portion of her mind that was ever thinking about water is now able to kick in and say, water isn't so scary. Other people swim. It's not a big deal. And so all of a sudden it became a whole brain thought rather than stuck in one neural pathway of water is scary. And I got water up my nose when my cousin pushed me and everything shifted for her. And from that moment forward, she's dipping her head underwater. Nothing is scary anymore. It's a really, really huge thing.
Since we're talking about the retreat and I've got mine coming up, which I know are two very different things, Vipassana versus that. And I'm also very curious to see how my brain, while I'm there, tries to relate some of the things that we've been talking about here, along with just like the being in my own head. So I'm excited. Well, I say excited now. We'll see. It may be terrifying, but just to see like where's my brain going to go. I kind of need this because your brain you eventually have to give up. So on the note of going to my retreat, which is 2 weeks from now, and we'll record before and after if I'm still of sound mind. I won't be as tan. Because I think I'll be
sound
inside.
mind. It's like we have to record this a few years ago, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I might be a little bit. I might not be as red. If I'm assuming I'll be inside the whole time, I'll probably be a little pasty. But so again, it's a 12-day silent Vipassana retreat. You did yours over the summer, or I'm sorry, it's always
Winter.
summer for me. But it's no exercise, very regimented meals, very regimented sleep cycle. No reading, no obviously electronics, no talking, unless you have to talk to an instructor. I also imagine they don't let you write anything. Did you see anybody? Are there people taking notes? So you can't have anything?
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
That was my question.
The whole idea is you want to stew in your own thoughts. You want to actually get to know what they are. So like the thing is, like, let's say, for example, and this is the example I give to anyone, like, let's say you and I right now have a conversation and you do something that upsets me. The most common thing to do would be for like, if I'm like super evolved, maybe I'll go journal about it or something like that. Or I'll go and talk to my friend and say, oh my God, can you believe what Lee just did? Or I'll do something to kind of like let that energy inside of myself go. The beauty of the Vipassana retreat is something happens to you and you have no one to talk to. You have no way to journal about, you have nothing to do. And then what happens is once it comes up, the next thing that they do is say, now let's go meditate for the next 3 hours. Now let's go meditate for another hour. So even if you forget about it for 1 hour and 3 hours later, something in your mind is going to, like the monkey in your mind is going to go, do you remember that thing that bothered you? and you're going to get stuck in it, and you're going to like have your brain is going to go crazy trying to figure out what to think about this. And you're going to think about it from every single different perspective. And as you do, you're going to start noticing things happening in your body. You're going to notice, because while you do that, you're scanning your body. You're going to notice, you know what, my chest got a bit tight. So you think about it and you notice that your chest got a bit tight, and you just sit with that tightness in your chest and you go, okay, fine. So it's about this big, it's that much pressure. Okay, cool. And now you're focusing in on your chest. And then finally that feeling goes away and you keep meditating and everything is good. And then the thought comes up in your mind again. And then you go, and my jaw's clenched and I feel the tightness in my jaw. And you like start thinking about that. And next thing, you don't know why, but now you think, this reminds me of the time I wanted to scream at mom and I didn't. And like it brings up something from when you were 6 years old, when your mom left you in the grocery store and you didn't know what to do and you were so scared. And it gets you to deal with the real deep core issues that happened for you back there. And the whole idea is because you don't have any other way to process it, you have to go through it in your own way to finally get over it.
And isn't it amazing now, like we all have access to all these things, but the example I use is me in the middle of the night, like I'll get up to pee or something like that. And I'll go lay back down. And sometimes I don't have any negative thoughts. I'm just like, start thinking about planning what I need to do the following day. And next to me on the nightstand, I've got my Kindle and I have my my AirPods and my phone's behind me. And my phone's on Do Not Disturb. So like I'm not getting messages or anything and I don't like pick it up. But I pop these in. If I click them, it'll start playing my audiobook or podcast, whatever I was listening to last, and I can read. So like there's literally no point during the modern human's day where any level of uncomfortableness, even if it's not a negative thing, I got nothing to think about. Shit, okay, then you start scrolling and everything else. So that's going to be the interesting part is letting go of all that and like, well, now what?
Yeah. Yeah, we're a completely distraction-based society, right? Like, I mean, if anything bothers you, you've got 20,000 different ways to disconnect from it. But it's back to that thing that I've said so many times and I strongly believe. And it's basically the idea that the body keeps a score. Just because you distract yourself away from it doesn't mean that you're over it. And this finally gives you that opportunity, and it teaches you a very specific technique to actually release these things that are stuck in your body. So it's to take this in a very different direction. So yesterday, I'm always trying new things. I always love to play around with new things. So yesterday I tried something new called trauma release exercises. Very, very interesting. And so and this is something I actually used to teach my students, not trauma release exercises, and we may have even spoken about it at some point in time so you walk down the street, or if you're driving in your car and you get into a car accident and you have this enormous shot of adrenaline going through your system, coursing through your system like crazy, and you start shaking a bit, but you go, okay, Lee, get strong. You got to deal with a car accident right now. You got to make everything work. Let's swap insurance information. Let's get the people who need to go to the hospital, especially you who's been trained in military. You know completely how to deal with a situation as a situation shows up. And so what happens is you just move past that situation and everything is okay. Now, and 10 years down the line, you don't know why, but all of a sudden your shoulders are up to your neck and you don't really have any clue about what's going on. Now, let's take that to nature, for example, and I think that we may have discussed this on one of our podcasts, but basically, if you've got like a buck that's grazing on grass out in the wild somewhere, and the buck is grazing on grass and it's having a wonderful time, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, a lion comes running at it, and the buck runs away from the lion and has adrenaline rushing through its system, runs away from the lion, manages by like the skin of its teeth to get all the way away from the lion stops chasing it, and it finally gets to a place that's safe. As soon as that buck finally feels completely safe, it's going to start shaking. It's going to actually start vibrating and releasing all that tension it had in its body. And what they discovered about that is that because it has all this pent-up tension inside of it, that shaking actually gets the body to release that tension and release all the stored adrenaline. Whereas us as human beings, we don't have that same kind of ability because we've trained ourselves not to do that. And so this exercise, what it does is through very, very simple exercises, by just really kind of like sitting up against a wall and straining your legs, or by doing like very simple exercises, going into a bridge position in certain specific ways, and then sitting back and relaxing, you almost have no control over it, but your body starts shaking. And what it's doing is it's releasing all those pent up stresses that you had stored in your body that you didn't release when you should have. And so it starts releasing all these different things that you've had basically trapped inside of you for so very, very long. And to take this back to what we were talking about, it's like it's just another form of release, just a different way of doing it. Whereas Vipassana is the same thing. It's just basically teaching the body to release all these things, to identify and be release those things that you've had stuck in your body for so long.
Yeah, that's super interesting. You know, that would be very helpful for in my old jobs in law enforcement. I wasn't in patrol. I didn't wear a uniform or anything like that. I was a Fed. So, but I always thought, you know, those, and I will use law enforcement as an example. But yeah, they'll go on a 12-hour shift. Somebody on patrol will go, and usually it's somebody in their 20s. They'll go from 911 call to 911 call. It could be domestic violence. Then the next one could be somebody's cat stuck somewhere. The next one could be somebody tried to shoplift. And, you know, so like all day long, they're literally running these calls and not, and this is like an extreme example, but they're not dealing with anything in the moment. It's just like, now I have to switch over to this, switch over to that. So that's what it reminds me of when you're like, even the car accident thing is like, you're right. It's like, okay, well, like, I know I should be freaking out right now, but, you know, I've got got my kids in the car, whatever, all these other things that need to be done that you just don't have time. And then you just push it off. Then you get home at night and everybody's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine, you know, and who knows? It just sits there, you know?
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings that I think messes up people the most is a concept of big boys don't cry, big girls don't cry. It's just that concept of like, as a child, you knew that when something went bad, you cried, you released the energy and you moved on. And obviously that's the focus of the emotional alchemy process, to basically do it in the same way. But in the same way, it's, we get to this place that we don't release these things that are stuck inside of us. And I love exploring these different things through Vipassana, through things like trauma release exercises, etc., to find really good ways to release them. It's so essential.
It's upsetting that I'm just discovering these things now, but it's like, it's a better late than never. But you know, for anybody who's watching or listening, doesn't matter how old you are, there's plenty to work on. There is one thing with the retreats that I've been a little skeptical of, and I figure since you've been to a few of them now, and I'm not just talking about those retreats in general. I also, you see this kind of thing, and I hate to compare the two, but like the big TV evangelists or whatever, you know, when you see people like do the whole "you're healed" or whatever, and they get out of their wheelchair or thing like that. So I know those types of things happen, and you've met people at these retreats. They've actually healed themselves. They've actually had like success with the meditations and everything else. And I know, but some of that could just be just the feeling you get in the group and the community. So I guess what I'm saying is
I
like
love this question.
The high that you feel, the sense of community, that everybody's into the same thing. And it's the same thing. I've been to church. I'm not religious, but I've been to church enough times to know that you feel pretty goddamn good. Sorry, you feel pretty damn good when you leave, because it's like it's community. Like everybody's there for the same thing. So I'm wondering, does that carry out? Does that last?
Oh, I mean, again, back to Joe Dispenza's not original book, but one of his first books is You Are the Placebo. So if I walk up to, if someone believes in me enough and I say, you are healed, and they absolutely believe it, they will be healed. Now and it has nothing to do with me. It's just the fact that they believe it enough, as we were discussing before, that they actually, their mind will release the right chemicals, everything will shift for them. Now, and so at the Joe Dispenza retreat, a lot of people, or let's take it to the point of psychedelics. And yesterday, actually, I was talking to a friend that's working to become a psychedelic integrator. And to me, I think that is one of the biggest things. So if you go to a Joe Dispenza retreat and you have this amazing revelation, and your body, perhaps, like, let's just say, God forbid, you do have some form of cancer or something like that, and you go to a Joe Dispenza retreat and you have a revelation, you're like, oh my God, I think my body's now healed from cancer. If you now go back to your old life, start doing the exact same old things, even if your body started releasing the chemicals to cure the cancer, and you didn't keep up being that new version of you, all that you had was a moment of a flash in the pan of something that stood a chance of healing you, but you didn't become the right person to maintain that shift. And it's back to that thing that we've discussed before. It's not about your goals, it's about your habits, which is why, like, it's so important. That's why I keep going back to Joe Dispenza retreats. And I could probably quote this guy verbatim at this point in time from the number of retreats and number of books I've read of his, etc. But there's something really powerful about getting that injection of the information yet again, and then coming back on the high and using it to just ride that roller coaster for that much further. And so after the retreat, the whole idea is you need to integrate it into your daily life, and you need to become the person for whom that change is possible. Otherwise, I'll use you as an example. I mean, you gave me the perfect example. You were walking down the street and you said, oh gosh, I have no pain. This feels wonderful. Something in the back of your head said, But do I have pain? And you went, oh, yeah, I guess I could find it. And the pain came right back.
Mm-hmm.
What you need to do is to become the person that says, I have no pain. This is wonderful. And when you feel pain, instead of sitting there going, instead of the pain pulling you back to being the person that has the pain, what you want to have happen is when you experience the pain, you go, gosh, this is just remnants of the old thing because now I'm the person without the pain. You need to become the new person that doesn't have the issue, and it explains away the problems rather than the problems pull you back to the old person that had the issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, this is super interesting, and we'll use my knee as an example because it's easy. It does hurt right now because I've been thinking about it, but it's funny. On the walk, I talked myself out of the pain, or got that mindset. Then I'm like, well, it's supposed to hurt. And sometimes in the morning when I get up and I roll out of bed before I remember, and I'm like, wait, my knee's supposed to hurt. And then it starts hurting, it's just so fucking stupid. But it's, but that was what I was getting at though with the retreat and all. It's like you're there and it's in your head and you're surrounded by all these people and you're all of the same mind and you all believe, you know what I mean? It's that intense like community and everything. And then like integrating it into the daily life. I think that's where most people would struggle. Of course I would too, because you still have to go back to your life. So that would be tough, right? Like changing enough that you're still you and you still you can be with your family, friends.
Which is back to our conversation that we had before about people like I think before I mentioned it, it's my favorite statement for them, like the ayahuasca warriors, the people that go off, do ayahuasca 30 times. And every single time that they do ayahuasca, they get the revelation that changes their lives. But then they go back to their old lives and they just say, okay, fine, ayahuasca changed me. And they think that that's enough. Mm-hmm. That is not where the change happens. It's about the integration. It's about becoming the new you. It's my company. The name of my company is actually called Future Pace. And that is a term from hypnosis and NLP. That's about taking the change and imagining your future with that new change within it. It's actually becoming the new you to actually pace yourself into that new future. And so it's people go to this retreat, and I can tell you that probably 90% of the people in that retreat experience something. And unfortunately, I would say, like, please God, it's a higher number, but probably it's a lower number, but probably 80% of those people go back to their normal lives and say, oh gosh, Joe Dispenza was so wonderful. And so like for me, for example, like, and I showed this to you before, but like and again, I'm not going to show it in very specific detail, but like sure. I've got specific reminders all around me, like my affirmation cards, or I've got things I put underneath my pillow when I go to sleep, or every single day I do my meditation, or my girlfriend and I, every single night before we go to sleep, we do a ceremony where we actually light a candle together and then kiss each other to feel how grateful we are for each other. It's doing these small things on a daily basis to create the habits that change you. You want to keep reminding yourself of who it is you choose to be. And as soon as you forget, the most important thing you can do in that moment is do something to remind yourself. So when you wake up in the morning and your knee doesn't hurt, what you should do is go like, oh my God, that's wonderful. I really am healing, at the very least, if not healed. But at least step onto the path of healing. And as soon as your knee hurts, what happens is you go, okay, fine, so maybe I should lie down again and let my knee relax and remind myself what that's like. Or in whatever way you can in your mind, shift yourself back to the person that's healing rather than the person that felt healed for a split second, but is still the broken person.
You just answered my next question about healing. So it's like most of us, because humans are stupid, most of us, it's a all is lost. It's kind of like if somebody who's trying to like kick an addiction or something, and then they'll have like one drink, one bump of Coke, or not Coca-Cola, the other the Florida stuff, or the or heroin or something like that. That a lot of people fall back into that but I like what you just said about healing. Like I am still healing because my initial thought is like, oh, there's the pain again. I was wrong. It does actually hurt. But if I reframed it as like, okay, well, it hurts a little bit because I'm healing, then it's not like, it's like people who try to go on a diet, then they have a moment of weakness and eat half a pizza, and they're like, well, fuck it, I'm done. My diet's over. I just ruined it. Same thing with the drinking.
And that boils back down to the idea of you're trying too hard, because what you're doing in that moment is you're saying, I'm an overweight person who's on a diet, as opposed to saying, I'm a healthy person that sometimes does really bad shit, does stupid shit. And so, for example, if we take you back to the drinking thing, if you remember, the very specific thing I told you is, I'm never going to ask you to stop drinking. What I'm going to ask you to do is start making a decision about when to drink or not to drink, or every single time you choose not to drink, to compliment yourself, because what you're doing is you're actually reinforcing a new you. And then the next step beyond that is as soon as you start reinforcing that you and it becomes a real person, to then start stepping into that reality more and more and more until that you all of a sudden realize the fact of, you know what, I'm a non-drinker that used to have a drinking problem. And that is where you absolutely make the change forever.
All the advice and from just people that I know or things that I've read or I've heard other people talk about, what you told me about, like if I decide to drink, like I'm choosing to, and then when you said like you keep drinking all you want, like I think that the problem that people have is when somebody says you must stop, you have a problem, you must stop. But when you told me like I don't care if you keep drinking, but just like you just said, make it something like I'm choosing to do because I want to, not because I have to. That changed everything. I was like, shit, you're right. And now it's not even like I mentioned to you on a couple shows back. Now it's not even like, okay, it's completely different. Now, had you said, and this actually happened to me
right now.
I was like, I'm going to try to stop drinking. And I used my insurance to go find somebody who was well-intentioned, some therapist. I'm not sure what level of degree or whatever the licensing was. That's how little I cared about it. And it was one of those like, here's your chip, you got to go. And look, 12-step programs save a lot of people. And I believe in those things. It's not really for me.
Me too.
But that wasn't, the thing is, I love the program. The thing is, the turnoff for me is like immediately I walked into the door and she was like, you can never, ever drink again or whatever. And I think that automatically in my brain put me at odds with just everything. I was like, well, fuck, like, now I'm going to try to find a way around it So yeah, that whole mindset, that whole framing has 100% worked for me. And you only told me like one time and it works. So it's amazing.
And the one part I want to say is it's like, because like I said, I strongly believe in 12-step programs because I love every step of those 12 steps. I think that they're very well thought out and very powerful. I'll say that the person you went to see was just bad at what she said. And so I just want to clarify this for the people that are on the 12-step programs. I mean, I'd say work with someone that gets you over it. But the real philosophy behind the 12-step program is every single day you choose not to do the addiction that day. It's like, what do they say? It's like, you're like a camel. Every single day you have to wake up and decide not to, and realize you won't be drinking today. You're like a camel in the desert kind of thing. It's like, it's not a matter of you will never drink again. It's a matter of like teaching you that every single day you get to make the choice to not drink because you are choosing to be the different person. And that is where the power comes from. And then it adds in the concept of faith and a higher power, forgiveness, etc., which are such powerful things to release things that, for example, I believe Vipassana can do, etc. But the idea of the 12-step program isn't telling a person never drink again. If you do, you're damned and you're screwed. That takes away all personal power. It's like, it's the idea of sitting there saying, you can choose to never drink again. And we are going to, every single time you come in here, be your supportive environment that's going to clap for you and tell you how wonderful you are for making that decision today. And if you fall off the wagon, we're going to just give you a new chip and get you to start over because that's what it's about. When you fall off the wagon, tell you that you're not a bad person, just keep going.
Well, I should clarify that the therapist that I went to go see, she was affiliated with the 12-step program, but she was my barrier of entry. So she was like, here, go, you must stop drinking, come back and see me next week. I need you to go to the program. But she wasn't part of the program. So it wasn't handled properly for sure. And I gave up right away, as a matter of fact. I didn't even go into the meeting. Now I was a lot younger and, a lot more immature. So I just like, screw you, lady. And so I didn't even go from her office to the meeting. I was like, I was completely turned off by it. But yes, I do think that the program's great. And even if you're not, I know there's some religious connotations to some of it, but it doesn't matter. That could be whatever it is to you. But I think that the steps are amazing. And we hear that so many people have so many great things to say about it. But yeah, it's like, humans are humans, right? So even if it wasn't a therapist or somebody, if it was, let's say, my girlfriend or whatever said, hey, you can never drink again. You better believe that, if she's not around, or if I have a few days to myself, or if I have to run somewhere, even if I didn't want to drink that day, I'm telling you this because this is stuck in your brain. Not with the girl that I'm with now, but this has happened in previous relationships where somebody said, hey, I need you to completely stop something. Well, you better believe when I run to the store, I'm going to stop and have a beer at Outback Steakhouse. I may not even want one that day. I'm just doing it because F you, you know?
Yeah.
So what a terrible way to go about things though. But yeah, I mean, and look, people don't know how to handle things. And I think it's the being able to forgive yourself when you screw up. That's the problem, because it's that all is lost thing. And like kind of brings me back to what I was mentioning before about, like something, my knee starts to hurt again, and reframing it as, okay, but it's on the upswing, it's healing, instead of like, oh, that shit yesterday when I was walking and I talked myself out of it, that was bullshit. It really is hurt. So yeah, that's a wonderful way to reframe things. Very helpful.
It goes back to the concept of the human brain cannot process a negative. Like we're saying, like if I told you not to think of a purple elephant, whatever it is, so if you tell yourself not to do something, you are shoving that thought into your brain over and over again. Like, don't think of purple elephant, don't have a drink, don't have a drink, don't have a drink, don't have a drink. As opposed to sitting there saying, I'm a powerful individual. I'm a powerful individual. I can choose not to have a drink. I could have a drink. I could choose not to. I'm a powerful individual. What would you rather have shoved into your brain? It's like, it's just that simple. And people don't understand. It's like, it's such a powerful thing. I know I said it to you before. The unconscious mind is always eavesdropping. So if you're sitting there saying, don't have a drink, that little kid inside of you is going to say, well, screw you, I'm going to have a drink anyway. And the unconscious mind inside of you is going to be picturing a drink saying, not that, not that, not that. So you've got everything working against you. Whereas if on the other side, you sit there saying like, I can have a drink if I want to, but do you know what? I'm powerful enough to not have one today. Or or in the same way, like if I were to tell you, don't think about the pain in your knee, you're going to sit there going like, okay, well, damn it, but like it really hurts. How do I not think about the pain in my, and this is going to be something you're going to experience in the Vipassana retreat, and you're going to come back like a week later and go like, oh my God, you're going to sit there going, you're going to be sitting in a very uncomfortable position for 11 hours a day going, don't think about the pain in your back. Don't think about how stressed your shoulders are. And as long as you keep telling yourself not to think about it, it's going to drive you nuts until at some point in time, you stop telling yourself not to think about it. And you're like, I guess I'm just going to have to suffer for the rest of my life. So be it. And as soon as you surrender to it and you just say that's the way it's going to be, you're out of the trap of the constant thought pushing you in that direction.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I'm glad. And the thing is, like, this is all reinforcing everything for me too. So it's so funny, man. It's like we could get on here and I know, like we mentioned where, Dr. Joe, a lot of his stuff is repetitive, but we touch on the same topics here a lot. But I think it's important for me to hear, so I know it's important for everybody else to hear too. So it's great.
I really hope so.
Look at things, different perspective. I know you're kind of under the weather a little bit. You could probably use some rest. We don't need to drag this out any longer.
No, I think that's really, really perfect. I just want people to know the fact that the boot camp is always ongoing and that they're always welcome to join it, because I still think it's one of the most powerful tools I've shared with the world, and it's completely free, and I want people to enjoy it.
Absolutely. And I think we have a live webinar coming up. This show should be out before then.
Yeah.
What are the details on that?
Oh, yeah. So June 20th, so actually tomorrow from the day that we're recording or the day that this podcast is releasing, we're doing the first in our webinar series where I just go live with my Facebook group just for 15, 20 minutes, just talking about a specific topic, just answer any questions or just ramble on as I do so easily. I definitely ramble. And so the one tomorrow, the one on June 20th is actually going to be about fulfilling relationships. And I'm really excited to talk about it. I actually had a course about relationship, and so I've got a lot to talk about. And my biggest challenge is how do I fit what I want to fit in 15 to 20 minutes? But it's really great, and it's going to be happening pretty often. We're probably aiming to do the same things most Thursday nights. It's completely free. It's just for members of our group, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time. And please log in and hear what it is, and then the recording will be saved so people in the group can watch it.
That's awesome. And it will be exclusively for people that are in the community, in the group. And really looking forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun. And if it runs over 15 minutes, so be it. Just make sure everybody, make sure you eat something and hit the bathroom, do all the things I have to do before we sit down and record one of these. So I don't have to wear a diaper or sit on a puppy pad while we get into one of our long sessions. But sounds good, my friend. To be continued.
Oh, it's great chatting with you, man. Have a great one.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. If you've ever wondered if journaling could change your life, you can find out for free by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. Also, if you're looking to connect with people who are just as passionate about growth as you are, check out our Facebook community. It's a great place to discuss what you've heard on the podcast and get access to exclusive content and sessions that are only available there. Just search for Human Evolution Movement on Facebook, or you can find the link in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.